I am the famous American. I'm going to tell you the way I perceive it. I've thought about this. Let's look at the whole continent of America. From North all the way to South America, Central, all of America. Let's just look at the whole thing. Not simply the nation. America. North, Central, the whole thing. Let's look at Africa. The continent, Africa. Look at America, look at Africa, look at them both. Let's travel back in time. Something that I perceive that they had in common is that they were less civilized compared to, let's say, people in the Middle East or people in Europe, for example. Therefore, they were more vulnerable to to be attacked. So what happens? Well, in modern day United States, modern day Mexico, modern day South America, in the American side of the world, the Europeans come over. And ultimately, they are more advanced as far as technology goes compared to the couple thousand nations, hundreds of nations that made up Native America, all the different groups all throughout the United States and all of America. And they weren't as, technology was not quite as present in the same way it was in Europe. So what happens? Ultimately, fast forward, the Europeans ultimately take over America, genocide ensues, etc. You know the whole thing. And that's not just in the United States, that's in America, it's in Central America, it's in South America. That's the story. And a similar note, Africa. Now I understand there's Egypt, there's parts of Africa that don't necessarily fall into this category the same way, but so much of Africa also, and when I perceive it, more of a tribal situation. All these nations, and yes, they're fighting with each other. Same thing that was happening with Native Americans. They're fighting with each other. They're pillaging each other. All these things are happening internally because we perceive them as the same race. We don't think of it that way. So ultimately, less technology going on in Africa, most of Africa, and many African people end up getting sold in slavery. And when I say many, that's an understatement, obviously. They end up coming to America. So I think it's interesting that when we look at two places in the world who are the least technologically advanced, they end up being overthrown by other groups of people who had better technology ultimately. With that being said, you look at the United States specifically, and you see specifically, this is the way in many parts of all of America, but specifically the United States, we have a lot of people who are of Native American descent, and we have a lot of people who are of African descent. Not me so much. That could have been different had there been better technology in America with the Native Americans and with Africans. Had they been more technology advanced, then I guess things would be a lot different. I think that's interesting to see how all that played out, for better or worse, because we can't change our ancestors, we can't change the story, but I think it's interesting to look at it. Now, I could be way off in some of the things I said, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But ultimately, we look at America, we look at Africa. They were behind in technology compared to other people who were able to either take them over or to buy their slaves and bring their slaves to the new land, which they were already taking over from the Native Americans. Help me sort that out. I think there's a lot there, and I think it's interesting. And I think it's important to face the facts and deal with that. So let's sort that out in the comments right here.